I wanna be a producer with a hit show on Broadway. I wanna be a producer.
Hey guys, it's Ken. Quick announcement before we get into this week's podcast. Have you ever been curious about how Broadway investing actually works? Maybe you want to put some money into a show yourself, find the next Wicked or Hamilton, or maybe you're raising money for your own show and you just have some questions about where that money actually goes. Well, I'm teaching a Broadway Investing 101 seminar on November 7th that will answer all these questions and a whole lot more. November 7th, 2 o'clock, right here in New York City. You can sign up by going to theproducersperspective.com and clicking on the Consulting and Seminars tab, and all the information is there. Hope to see you on November 7th at 2 o'clock. Now enjoy the podcast. Hello, everybody. Ken Davenport here. Welcome back to the Producer's Perspective podcast. Now, before I introduce today's guest, I have to tell you a little story. So, as you all know, I talk to lots of theater goers at my own shows, on the subways, when I see people holding playbills. And the other night, I approached a couple from Georgia who I saw holding a playbill, and they said they were in town seeing some shows. And I asked them what shows they were seeing. And they said, oh, we've seen 3 shows. We saw Book of Mormon. Yes, you hear the laughter already. You know what's coming. Book of Mormon, Something Rotten, and Aladdin. And they, of course, they love them all. And what do all 3 of these shows have in common? Well, all 3 were directed and choreographed by the man who is here to talk to you today. Welcome to the podcast, Tony Award winner Casey Nicholaw. Welcome, Casey.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Now, I swear that is an absolutely true story, and thank God she loved them, because it really would have been a
Thank
bummer.
God. I wouldn't have let you start with that. We
but
really liked 2 of them. 2 of them were so good.
It is crazy, though, when you think about it. You have these 3 real mega $1 million club shows on Broadway right now. You have a bit of a divining rod for finding these hits as well as making them into hits. What do you think is the secret ingredient to that?
Oh, I have no idea, actually. I mean, South Park's a big ingredient to Book of Mormon, and Aladdin is a big ingredient to Aladdin. You know, Something Rotten is just a show that totally appealed to me when Kevin McCullum brought it to me, and it's just been a labor of love. We absolutely love the show.
But as I always bring you up as an example of directors and choreographers and who you should look for, because even when you go back further, Drowsy Chaperone, which was your debut as a director, right?
Yep.
Spamalot was a hit. In fact, if you look at your Playbill Vault list, I have 7 shows you've done in the commercial Broadway arena, and it looks to me like 5 have been commercial successes. Your recoupment rate is outstanding.
It's pretty awesome.
So, tell me, I do believe you have an innate sense, whether you know it or not, of what the modern or the audience that goes to Broadway shows want to see. What do you look for specifically, or what attracts you to the show?
Well, I mean, something that's buoyant and that is, actually something that I'm going to want to see is sort of what I look at it. You know, I look at a show and I go I would love to see something like this. Or, it's a combination of that, but it's also a combination of the storytelling of it. You know, if it feels like it's a good story or it's a good script and it's something that, that interests me or that has a buoyant build to it, which all 3 of those shows do have in common. The storytelling is fantastic in those shows.
So you mentioned the shows that you would want to see. Tell me a little bit about how you got into the theater in the first place, where it all began.
Oh, it all began in San Diego, really. My parents were not from a theatrical background, and they just saw that I was interested in that. And I think that's when I sort of found myself, as a young kid. 13 years old, I was suddenly a dancing Indian in Annie Get Your Gun in San Diego and in junior theater there, and, made new friends because high school was not for me, and junior high school was not for me. I just felt like such a misfit, bad at sports, made fun of, all that kind of thing. And then I found my theater family, and that was great, finding a place to sort of fit in that way.
And then you made the move to New York City to become a performer here?
Yeah, but it sort of started earlier, in San Diego, because, I did a show at the Old Globe when I was 15 with Greg Barnes, who was in it as well, and Brian Stokes Mitchell was in it, and Kathleen and Jimmy was in it, and, I learned so much from being in that situation, and I just knew that I wanted to move to New York. I stayed at UCLA for like a year and a quarter, and I was like, I'm out of here, basically, because I just knew I wanted to be here.
So you get here, and what happened next?
I got here. I waited tables for a really long time. I came as a performer. I had $50, nowhere to live, slept on people's couches, which you kind of could do then. Waited tables absolutely everywhere. Watched all my friends get their equity cards. Lost my hair. And once I lost my hair, then I started working. And I got absolutely. I couldn't get jobs at all. And then I sort of, but it's those informative times, I sort of developed my sense of humor when I lost my hair, because it was a very self-deprecating sort of sense of humor, but I wanted to be the first to talk about my hair loss before people started commenting on it, and everyone's looking at my forehead when they're talking to me like, hey, I haven't seen you in a long time, great, yeah, how are you? And their eyes just like focused up at the top of my head. But, then I started, getting in the ensemble of all these shows. And I was always, the waiter or the gangster or the stagehand or the, all those parts. But I loved it.
First Broadway show?
Crazy for You.
Crazy for You.
Yeah.
What a great show that was.
Awesome. It was everything you could ask for. Being someone who grew up loving MGM musicals and, getting when I was growing up, we didn't have VCRs, or we're just getting beta, so I was always going to the revival houses, like, checking the schedules, having to drive to the theater to get the schedule, and circle the ones I wanted my parents to drive me to so I could go see all the old musicals.
How many shows did you do as a performer on Broadway? 8. Yeah. So when did you start to think that you wanted to be on the other side of the proscenium? Well,
I was always, I just paid attention to all of it, and I've always wanted to do it. And, I actually was choreographed a lot non-equity before I started concentrating on performing. Like during the losing my hair period, I was choreographing non-equity. And then I just decided after a while I wanted to get back to it. And, I've told the story so many times now, but for those of you who have not heard it, I was in Seussical, and I just really wanted to do something more. And so I rented some studio space, and I said, I'm just going to be creative. And I went to New Dance Group every Wednesday and Saturday between shows. And I was like, I'm going to be creative. And I wasn't very creative to start with. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why am I here? What do I want out of life? And then before you know it, I choreographed 3 numbers, had 25 dancer friends. Thank you, everybody, who did this with me. And I arranged 3 numbers, and I invited every director, writer, producer that I'd worked with in those 8 Broadway shows. And everyone came, and Kevin McCullum gave me a job choreographing Prince and the Pauper for the Ordway and the Fifth Avenue. And that's kind of what started it. And then I did Dance Break, which I don't know if they still even do it, but I did Dance Break, and then Des McAnuff hired me to do the Sinatra show at Radio City.
So your choreography career starts going well. You do Spamalot, big fat hit, and then Kevin McCullum again says, "Hey, you want to direct Drowsy Chaperone and choreograph it?"
Right?
Did you have? Oh, that's the next step for me. I'm going to do this.
I just said sure. I just said sure. And then it happened. I met with the writers of Drowsy the morning after Spamalot opened. And then they were like, you want to do this? I was like, yeah.
And you jumped right in. Were you nervous about it?
I was nervous. I mean, it was a very different show then. When I came on board, I knew I loved it, and it made me laugh and stuff. But, it didn't have the physical production that the Broadway show ended up having. It wasn't set in someone's apartment. It was a chair on the side, and there were like 6 doors, and people came in and out of the doors and did these sort of period songs while the man in chair, basically deconstructed it all. But they were doing that show with very little money, so that was their set. In their heads it probably was, but we made it a real physical place to then sort of disappear into this musical theater world.
So that brings up an interesting question: is when do you like to start working on these new shows?
I like getting in as soon as I possibly can. When I got involved with Drowsy, they'd done it in Toronto already, and then they did, the Enamped 45-minute version of it, and then they brought me on board and changed it a lot. We changed it a lot. We cut like 6 songs right off the top. moved all kinds of stuff around, made it, they hadn't really, they'll be the first to tell you, they hadn't really thought about the dance element in that way because there wasn't a dance element, really. We changed the opening number, we, gave it more of a 20s feel as opposed to it was a little bit more in the operetta world when we started.
So, to talk about, because I agree with you, I don't think writers think about dance at all sometimes. When I read musicals, they just don't visualize it, they stare at text all day. And, of course, some of the greatest Broadway directors we've ever had have been choreographers first, from Fosse, Bennett, Jerome Robbins. Why do you think choreographers make great Broadway directors?
Well, one is I think it's one vision, which is a great thing because, with two people, there's more of a chance of them not getting along or having a different vision. And, a musical has to move literally with pace. And so I think a choreographer knows pace well and is able to keep things moving, especially for me, the shows that I've been doing, the comedies, it just has to go. And there's like a natural build that has to happen in a musical. And I think that a choreographer is also very helpful with the transitions. So someone who's directing a choreographing can move things literally more quickly.
So Book of Mormon obviously exploded onto the scene several years now.
Right.
But the buzz was deafening about that show. And what I loved actually about the advertising campaign that Scott Rudin initiated back then was you didn't really see much of the show in any of the advertising.
He was very smart.
Smart, because it just made you want to get in there that much more.
Yeah.
When you did the workshop with that, there was a workshop, because it was supposed to go to New York Theater Workshop first, I think
so. I actually was brought on pretty late because they'd been working on it for like 5 or 6 years, and then I was brought in as new eyes, and then we did a lab, like 4 weeks after I got hired, or 3 weeks after I got hired, and then it went to Broadway from there.
At the final performance of the lab, did you know what it would become? Were you like, this is going to be special?
We knew we had something special.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I didn't know it when I started, for sure, and I was also petrified, so I didn't know, and this is people that had been working on it already, and I was really nervous about it all. But then you just got this feeling, and also it was that sort of feeling that when I had friends come to the workshop, they said afterward, "Oh my God, that was amazing. I loved it." And then they texted me later that night, I can't stop thinking about that. And then 2 days later, calling me and saying, "I just have to say, I have not stopped, so I still have that song stuck in my head, or I still am thinking about this moment." So that's 3 times friends are as opposed to someone just going, "That was cute," or "That was sweet."
Cute is
fun. Cute or sweet.
It's the
worst. What? It's the worst. It's absolutely the worst. I just want someone to say, "That was so funny."
I did a show.
Or I loved it.
Yeah, I did a show off Broadway several years ago, and I always hang out at the entrance of the theater, and I heard like 4 people say it was cute after the 3rd preview, and I was literally like, "Nope, not going to make it."
Yeah, totally.
Shows don't make it on cute. You need much more passionate word of mouth. So tell me a little bit about your process. You get a call, and you're like, "Hey, we want fresh eyes on Mormon," or we get a call with Drowsy Chaperone.
Right.
What's the first thing you do? Are you a research guy? Do you go to your studio?
Well, it depends which hat I'm wearing. If I'm wearing the director hat or the choreographer hat. If I'm wearing the director hat, it's all about the script to start with. So getting the storytelling right, deciding which songs are going to build just as strongly as the script builds. Because the song structure is so important in it. It has to build, and there has to be the right, ballad next to this, or we got 3 ballads in a row, so it's just going to tank here. It really is dictated by that, I think. And I all the time deal with writers. We were talking about this the other day as we were working on Tuck, that, writers say, "Well, it's an energetic scene, so it sort of acts like a song." No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't. If there's not a song in it, it doesn't act like a song. People just, they know. It's like 3 pages song, 3 pages song, 3 pages song. It's like, the encores rule. And also, it's a pretty good rule to follow anyway. Because then, if you've got 13 pages in between 2 songs, the show's going to lag. It totally is. And you have to figure it out. You have to restructure it somehow. Where was I? There's always a moment in a show where you go, like in Aladdin, actually. We didn't have we suddenly realized we don't have a production number in the middle of Act 1. And we need one. And we completely changed Babcock, Omar, Aladdin, Kassim, which was just a small, cute number. Cute. number with the 4 guys. And it just didn't go anywhere. And it was like song number 3 in the show. And so we pulled it out and we moved it and made it a giant production number in the middle so that we had major ensemble buoyancy in between Arabian Nights and Friend Like Me.
So let's talk about Aladdin a little bit, which is obviously a big fat hit here. But when you did the tryout in Toronto, there was all this scuttle like, ooh, maybe it's not working. Maybe it's not working. And
maybe it's a turd.
Yeah. I love your bluntness. I would never say that.
But I was said no. But honestly, I was saying I was like, this can't be a turd. This can't be a turd. This can't. I just kept saying that, and it was feeling like that, and everyone just rallied, completely rallied. And I went into killer mode, and I kept talking to Natasha Katz, and I'm like, I'm going into killer mode now. She's like, all right, go killer. And Tom and Anne, everyone were so supportive of it and saying, this is what we need to do. Because I suddenly I know what to do, and they're like, do it. And we all worked together, and it was a really supportive atmosphere, and we were able to just really, Chad, everybody was just champs, and like, let's beef the jokes up. Let's cut numbers. We gave numbers to other people. The whole thing about Aladdin was that it was originally conceived, as this sort of musical theater movie that ended up being an action adventure. And part of the conceit of the musical theater part of it was that Babcock, Omar, and Kasim narrated the whole story. So we thought, perfect! And we used all the stuff that, Howard and Alan had done with those 3 guys narrating, and we realized that it was a mistake. And so we took Arabian Nights away from those 3 guys, and they were great about it, and gave it to the Genie, because we didn't see the Genie for 45 minutes into the show, which is kind of what happens in the film as well. And then we were stuck with, okay, if we're cutting all that, what do we do to change the set? Because every time we had to change the set, those 3 guys did that. So we ended up, maybe not ideal, but we ended up bringing, getting a brand new drop that was a palace hallway drop and doing half of every scene in front of it. So we had to do a lot of thinking and a lot of re-choreographing and a lot of rejigging, and it really ended up well.
What percentage of it changed from Toronto to Broadway?
I would say about 30.
That's a lot.
It is a lot, but I would say about 30. We worked really hard during that time. Everybody worked really hard. Every department.
I wrote a blog a long time ago that I think where creative team members earn their stripes is during a preview period or during a tryout, because people don't realize that you're working under the confines of stagehand hours and scenery. You had a set built. It wasn't like you were going to trash it and build a whole new one.
Yeah.
So you had to write this story or rewrite the story around pre-existing.
Absolutely.
Well, obviously you did incredible work. I love the killer mode idea. Because that's certainly what you need to do. How do you get feedback during that? Do you listen to audience members during previews? Was it just your own gut saying this is a turd? Usually it's my own gut.
And audience response, of course. I watch half the show looking up and down the aisles. Down the rows, but mostly it's my gut. Again, it's the thing I said earlier. It's like, it has to be a show I want to see. And I wasn't really enjoying myself at Aladdin when I was watching it. So I thought, well, something's wrong. If I'm not looking forward to the next number, then it's not right.
And was it surprising to you, that first preview where you're like, oh, we're in good shape, we're in good shape?
Yeah, it was.
It was.
And also we were in Toronto, and and then you start going like, well, is it the audiences here? Would it be the audience in New York? Is it a Canadian versus a New York thing? You just don't know. You start questioning everything, but then you have to really listen to your gut. No, I'm not Canadian, and I wasn't enjoying it. You know what I mean? There were so many moments I loved in it, but we all knew it, and I think we all felt it. And you could sort of tell. And you can sort of tell in actors a little bit too, when you start getting a little disgruntled about things. You can go like, okay, maybe things aren't so good. You just have to watch everything for signs. You really do.
So we talked a little bit about how you prepare as a director. How do you prepare as a choreographer? So you get, here's a big dance number I have to do. What's the first step in creating that number?
Well, actually, it's even before that you get a song and you don't know what it's going to be. And then I'm like, hey, I think this should be a big dance number. So it sort of starts there. And then the next thing is always Glenn Kelly or David Chase. But for the most part, Glenn's the person I've worked with the most. So I'll say to Glenn, I want a big dance number here. And he'll just go write something. then we'll start working together. I'll say, oh my God, I love this part of it. And he inspires me so much. I mean, he is just one of the unsung heroes of bringing all the shows that I work on to life. And many people, Susan Stroman and, Warren Carlyle, that they use Glenn, and he's absolutely fantastic. So then it goes with that. And then I basically sit on the floor and close my eyes and watch it as a movie like a million times while Glenn's playing it, and see what I want to see, and see where it lags, and see where I need more. And then, then after that, I'll get, I'll get the associates, my associates, which, for those 3 shows we talked about, John McGinnis has been the associate choreographer, and then, Jen Warner and Steve Bebout, and Scott Taylor have been the associate directors, and, we'll go in a room with Glenn and for a week just try to start staging the numbers, and then we'll get, it's like 6 dancers or something, and put all the numbers together with those people.
Actually, never even thought about that. If you think about it in terms of like writing music first or lyric first, so your dance numbers are music first.
Absolutely. And for me, I don't think everybody works that way. I don't know if everyone works that way, but that's it for me.
And so much of the numbers that you've done have so much comedy in them, right? Especially the Mormon stuff, of course, and Chaperone. Where does that just come out of that movie in your head? Do you improvise with the dancers? What?
It does. It does come out of my head in that way, and also it has to stay true to, to me, it has to stay true to the feeling of the show. Because, if you're doing a big comedy, if you're doing Book of Mormon, the numbers have to be funny too. You can't just stop and do a dance number for no reason, just to have energy, You can a little bit more in Aladdin. It doesn't have to be as funny unless it's the genie, who's a funny character. But, Something Rotten and Mormon both have to have those hooks, and Drowsy did too.
So you have 3 big fat hits here on New York. You have another show coming up. But in addition, some of these shows, of course, are all over the world now. Book of Mormon in London. Aladdin, I'm sure, is going to be super global. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that your job is not over after opening night.
No, it's not.
How much of your time do you spend maintaining these shows?
Quite a bit. I return to the shows quite often, and also when there's understudies going on, or there's a cast change or something, to just make sure that the show stays in as good shape as possible. And it gets difficult after 4 years, with the show. I mean, it's great. It's great, but it's a lot, and I just want to be sure I'm still involved and keeping everything in as good shape as when it started.
And tell me a little bit about Tuck, the next show that opens this year for you.
It's a beautiful show. It really is. I love it. And Claudia Scheer and Nathan Tyson and Chris Miller are the authors and composer and lyricist. And it's a really beautiful, heartwarming story, basically about it was written in 70. I forget exactly which year, but in the 70s, about to help younger kids / early adults how to deal with life and death. And it was a story about, a family that lives forever. And if you had that choice, would you? And what the circle of life is. And it's a beautiful story.
It's not a big fat musical comedy.
It is not at all. It really isn't. But I was so drawn to the humanity of it.
Great. Now, what else is coming up for you? I had John Breglio on this podcast a few weeks ago. And he broke the news that you'd be doing Dreamgirls in London with us.
Correct.
So how did that come about?
I'm so excited. I'm just so excited. I don't know if I'm supposed to, but the news is already broken, I guess. And we've had auditions in London, so I guess people know it's happening. But no, Sonia Friedman, when I was at the Olivier's during Book of Mormon year, said, "I have the rights to this. Would you be interested in doing this?" I was like, "Are you kidding me?" It is seriously my favorite show. I moved to New York in 1982. I, stood for it, 6 or 7 times. I love it. Absolutely love it. And I'm so excited. And it's never been done in London, which is one of the cool things about it.
So you've worked for some of the best and most powerful producers in the business, from Scott Rudin to Kevin McCullum to Disney, of course. Tell me a little bit about what you like a producer-director relationship to be like, without naming who's your favorite.
No, I think that my favorite producers to work with, I think the best thing is we all meet. They trust me, you know? And then the thing is, they have opinions, and then they leave me alone during the rehearsal process, and then they're able to be fresh eyes and have lots to say. You know, they'll come after Act 1 run or after Act 2 run, and then when we're doing the runs in the studio. But then once we go into previews, that's where it's most helpful to have that person really, you know, weigh in with us.
Advice for people that want to do what you do, that want to direct, choreograph?
Honestly, just make it happen. you know, really, you know, figure out a way to do it and you know, work really hard. You know, it's a different thing for me because I didn't end up being an associate or anything first, you know, but I think that part of my work ethic as a performer and my experience being a performer in Broadway shows was what people knew I was reliable and had a sense of humor and all that kind of thing before I started doing this.
Any shows that you want to do before, like your dream list besides Dreamgirls?
You know, I mean, except for Dreamgirls, everything I've done really has not been a revival. It's been something original. The big one on my list was Most Happy Fella, and I got to do it in Encores, you know, year before last. The other one for me is Me and My Girl, which I've always wanted to do.
What about writers that you would... The South Park writers coming to Broadway, of course, was a very exciting thing for all of us. And anytime someone very successful from the other coast, if you will, or from somewhere else is exciting to us. Any writers that you think, God, they would have a great Broadway musical in them?
I don't know offhand. I have to think about that. And I think I don't want that in here.
Fine. Okay, last question, which is perfect for you because I ask every single person on my podcast this question. It's now been called my Genie Question.
Okay.
Which I want you to imagine that the genie from Aladdin that you helped create for the Broadway production.
You ask everyone this?
Every single person.
I love it.
Including Tim Rice.
Okay.
And you gave this genie another song. So he knocks on your door and says...
Do I get 4 then?
No. Just 1.
Okay.
But the genie says, thank you for giving me that extra song and for helping to make Aladdin the big fat hit it is instead of the turd it could have been. And I'm going to grant you one wish. What is the one thing that drives you so crazy about Broadway? That keeps you up at night, that makes you so angry that you would ask this genie to wish away with the snap of a finger?
Well, it's a tricky thing. I wish that there wasn't just one winner of a Tony Award. That's what I wish, because I understand it's about money and that has to happen, but I just wish that it wasn't so reliant on that a show could succeed or fail, and that there would be room for more in that way.
Great answer. There was Michael Grandage just gave an interview recently where he said Broadway, unlike the West End, is too focused. It's all about Tony Awards. That's all we do. From the start of the season, everyone handicaps who's going to win because that's all that we seem to care about instead of just doing great theater. Yeah,
because honestly, too, I don't know this because I'm not in marketing or anything, but I don't know that the rest of the world outside of New York worries about that as much. You know, we do because it's about getting the rest of the world in, you know, but I don't know that they do.
I think you're right. I actually think we're sometimes... Same thing with reviews, frankly. I think it's our own ego that we're trying to serve more than the audience.
Yeah. But I think if someone comes and they're only going to see one show, they're going to they want to know which the best one, by definition of winning an award, is.
Well, I want to thank you so much for spending the time with us. I know you're very busy. You've got to maintain
Absolutely.
all these productions around the world. And thank you for your contribution to the theater. You have an unbelievable track record, and it's really something that we can all learn from. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Thanks to all of you for listening. We've got another director next week. We have the original director of Les Mis, Mr. John Kerr, joining us. So tune in then. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks so much. Hey guys, don't forget about the Broadway Investing 101 seminar on November 7th, 2 o'clock. Go to theproducersperspective.com and click on the Seminars tab for all the details. We'll see you then.
I'm gonna be a producer. Look out, Broadway.